Hi, my name is Elise Marchand, and I'm here today to talk to you guys about legalizing and decriminalizing sex work. Two of my friends have been involved with prostitution underground, and I've had secondhand accounts of their experiences with prostitution. I've been studying this subject for about 5 years now. It's difficult to guesstimate or account for just how many prostitutes there are. However, surveys were collected through community sources, including public health programs and criminal justice programs, concluding that China, where prostitution is officially illegal, ranks number 1 with 5 million prostitutes and sex workers. India comes in second with 3 million, and US with 1 million, which accounts for about 1% of women in the US. And that's from the National Task Force on Prostitution. With prostitution being this prevalent, with or without it being legal, it would be best interest of those involved for sex work to be decriminalized, legal, and regulated. If the prohibition of prostitution was lifted, both sex worker and the customer and the community would reap benefits. Historically, to better understand this, we're going to look at historically, how has society viewed sex work? What is the legal status and or repercussions of sex work? And number 3, what are the benefits and the drawbacks of legalizing sex work? Anywhere there was money, goods, or services available for barter, somebody most likely always bartered for sex. Prostitution has been ubiquitous throughout history, and it existed in nearly every civilization on Earth, stretching back through all recorded human history. That's from thoughtco.com. So even through the before current era, 4500, the 700s, and 500s, in ancient Mesopotamia, ancient Rome, and ancient Greece, sex work has always been prevalent. In more recent U.S. history, in the 1700s, women followed the Continental Army, and they were called camp followers. They aided with domestic tasks and also prostitution. During the antebellum period, women didn't have much occupational choices, and it's estimated that about 1/3 to 1/6 of the working class work for pay through marriage, and most prostitutes were drawn from this class. In the 1900s, this is when prostitution gradually became illegal. Laws were enacted to prohibit interstate travel for immoral purposes and quarantine women suspected of having venereal diseases. Most states banned brothels, and at the end of World War II, prostitution was illegal, 1945. Today, exotic dancing and pornography are legal forms of sex work. Prostitution is still illegal, and it's one of the most dangerous professions in the country, worse than loggers, oil riggers, and Alaskan fishermen. The U.S. death rate for prostitutes is 204 out of every 100,000. A number of politicians and public figures have resigned due to sex-related scandals. Before 2018, the Department of Justice seized Backpage website and charged its founders on promotion of prostitution. And in April of 2018, Congress passed the Stop Enabling Sex Traffickers Act. So this is just kind of a regional look at what the fines and the penalties for the prostitute and for the customer are. U.S. sex work is completely illegal except for 10 counties in Nevada. So in New Hampshire, the penalty for the prostitute is 1 year in prison and or up to $2,000 fine. And the penalty is the same for the customer. And then you can see the laws on the right side of the chart here. The cost of prostitution. Every year in the U.S., between 70,000 and 80,000 people are arrested for prostitution, costing approximately $200 million for taxpayers, from HG.com. This is kind of everywhere in the world where sex work is decriminalized or legal. On the right bottom side, Ireland, Australia, Iceland, United Kingdom, and France, it is where it's limitedly legal, and we'll look at that in a minute. This is just kind of a look at the globe. Everywhere in red it is illegal, green is legal, tan is restricted. So in Sweden in 1999, they introduced the equality model. It combated commercial sexual exploitation and decriminalized prostitution. Basically, they wanted to target buyers and suppliers such as pimps and brothels. It was adopted in Canada, Ireland, Northern Ireland, Iceland, France, Israel, and Norway, and they saw a significant decrease in street prostitution and number of customers. Also, the risks of physical abuse and dangerous living conditions severely decreased. So a lot of people would say that sex work should remain illegal on the grounds of morality and for the health and safety of the worker, and it would generate further abuse of women and instill the idea in young women that their bodies exist only for exploitation by men. However, continual prohibition of sex work only further stigmatizes sex workers, drives prostitution further underground, and deters assaulted workers from reporting abuse without facing charges themselves. As it stands now in the United States, prostitution is especially hazardous and perilous illegal occupation. Black market prostitution has many risks: sex trafficking, legal repercussions, STI and STD infections, physical abuse, physical assault, and the worst would be death. Marshall Frank, who's a retired captain at Metro-Dade Police Department, stated the black market is nourished by draconian laws that forever fail to accomplish its intended purposes. Criminalization only exploits and drives deeper black market prostitution. So if we decriminalized, it would be the first step toward expanding labor protections. If the prohibition of prostitution were listed, there's so many benefits. The sex worker and the customer would benefit with strict regulations. Sex work could be limited to brothels, and brothels would be required to maintain safety and hygienic licenses, effective anti-trafficking policies. It could decrease the risks related to prostitution that we just went over. Also, the government would benefit in multiple ways: decrease in crime, increase in tax revenue, reallocation of law enforcement resources, and allocation of fine money to aid other government programs. You could reduce the jail and the prison populations and reduce the cost of $200 million of taxpayer money. Criminal fines, licensing fees, tax-related services allocated to funds social services programs such as domestic and sexual abuse survivors programs, mental health, substance abuse, and sober living programs, sex trafficking victim programs, and also job training programs to get these women out of prostitution and into better trained jobs. So the pros and cons of legalizing regulated prostitution: the benefits are definitely safer and more hygienic, less risk of physical assault and crimes and death. Government benefits: increased tax money, reallocation of law enforcement, decreased jail prison population, decreased sex trafficking, assist with resignation of sex work. Drawbacks include the glamorizing and normalizing of sex exploitation, degrades and robs workers of their humanity. Workers may evade taxation due to embarrassment of occupation. Younger male generations grasp the notion that women and girls are commodities to be bought and sold. They regress women's rights, militates a woman's healthy relationship with their own body, and some argue it could further unwilling coercion into sex work. Decriminalizing is endorsed and supported by many HROs such as Amnesty International, World Health Organization, UNAIDS, Freedom Network, and Global Alliance Against Trafficking Women. So my call to action: decriminalizing sex work is only the first step toward rights and safety for all people in the sex trades and their customers. This will immediately reduce the harms of policing, incarceration, deportation, and criminal records of the lives of sex workers and trafficking survivors. I call on organizations and individuals to urgently support this policy to protect the women and the customers in sex work. It may seem unethical to legalize sex work, but it's furthermore to continue unregulated on the black market. These women have a multitude of risks when it is on the black market, and it is shown in other countries that we can reduce those risks if it is taken off the black market and regulated. Remember that criminalization has never effectively ended either the sex industry, any violence and exploitation within it, but only advances its underground existence. I call you to look at my works cited. There's much more information in here about this, and kind of do some thinking on your own and see that this is more beneficial than criminalization. Thank you very much.